criteria that you should keep in mind. Any statement that you make that is part of your argument should have textual evidence. So it transforms a statement from something that is speculative, right, that I am speculating that this might happen, to an argument because you've backed it up. You have strong evidence to support your claim. So I give the example. If you say in your essay, Romeo describes his love for Rosalind using Petrarchan imagery, you must back that up. You must provide a textual example. So you can say something like, Romeo describes his love for Rosalind in hyperbolic terms. Quote, "Oh, heavy lightness, serious vanity, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health." End quotations, Act 1, Scene 1, lines 171 to 173. The more textual evidence that you provide, the more credibility you have as an arguer. Now, proof is only one part of the use of quotations. The second part is analysis. So a quotation will never stand on its own. You make a statement, you provide evidence, but then you must comment and analyze the thing that you've just provided. Okay? So you can look at the diction. You can look at the rhetorical devices, like metaphors. You can show how the language of the quotation propels your argument forward. Do not end a paragraph with a quotation because you leave your reader hanging. You wonder what that quotation has to do with your main argument. So you make the statement, you provide the evidence, and then you analyze the evidence and tie it back to your central thesis. So I have an example here. In the above quotation, Romeo employs a series of Petrarchan oxymorons to describe love as a contradictory emotion that gives him both delight and despair. His statement begins with an apostrophe, O, to signal heightened emotion. Romeo's use of standard Petrarchan language emphasizes his youthful immaturity. It is not until he meets Juliet that he dispatches with his cliched language and matures as a lover. So do you see how I make a statement, provide evidence, proof, and then provide analysis? So it is a complete paragraph. It is a coherent, independent idea. If you master format, you tell your reader that you have discipline, that you are professional, and that you have mastered format. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to master format, but it does take a little bit of time and a little bit of discipline. So in terms of quotations, the first thing you should avoid are overly long quotations, especially in a short essay. So 1 to 2 lines of quotation should be succinct enough to make your point. If you want to emphasize something in the quotation, if you really want your reader to pay attention to something, you can use italics. You can say, I'm not sure Dr. Riddell is going to get this. I really want to emphasize this particular word. So in your quotation, you provide your quotation. So what's in a name? And you really want me to pay attention to name. You provide an italicized name. And then you signal in your citation that emphasis was added. So you can either say my emphasis or emphasis added. It's a nice stylistic way of drawing your reader's attention to something that is really important and valuable. Okay, let's look at paragraphs. I mentioned earlier that paragraphs are like a mini essay, that they should have all of the components of an essay crystallized into this form. So you'll have a topic sentence, so you're announcing this one statement or idea. You'll have the confirmation, which is the textual evidence, and then you'll have a kind of conclusion which draws your idea back to the larger argument. Now, students often, because they're tied to the idea of a 5-paragraph essay in their first year, will have paragraphs that are overly long. So they'll have paragraphs that are 1 or 2 pages long. They'll either do that, or they'll have really, really short paragraphs. So paragraphs that are 2 sentences or 3 sentences. Both forms are incorrect. A paragraph is 5 sentences or more. You need to have 5 sentences in a paragraph to make it a paragraph, but you should not have a paragraph that is more than 1 page long. It means that you haven't fully thought out the structure of the idea, or that there are more than one idea within this paragraph. So go through and break up those paragraphs. When you signal a new idea, you signal a new paragraph. One of the things that students often do is that they bite off more than they can chew. They overextend themselves by trying to prove too many things in one essay. And so often you'll have 3 essays embedded in one. So you'll have 3 related points, but they go off in different directions. If you try to incorporate too many ideas into your essay, what is going to happen is that you lose focus and you don't actually get your hands dirty. You don't do a close reading and you don't prove anything because you're stuck in these major generalizations. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Especially in a short essay, one idea. You can focus on one character or one scene or even on one speech to give a very close, careful analysis of this idea. We would much rather, as professors, see you really develop an idea in detail than to just resort to big speculations and oversimplifications because you've taken on too much. It's actually harder to write a short essay than it is to write a long essay. Because in a long essay, you can really develop a number of ideas, you can bring in secondary sources, you have some room. To write a short essay, this really concrete piece of information in the short space of 4 to 5 pages, is often terrifying and daunting. In your upper year seminars, you'll be asked to write 8 to 10 page research papers. If you're doing an honors thesis, you'll be asked to write a 40-page paper, which is actually easier than writing a 4 to 5 page paper. I promise you. And it is a developed process. You're always developing your critical voice. It's something that you will be working on for the rest of your life, this effective form of argumentation and communication. Okay, so some of you may complain that professors all want something different. I often have that complaint where a student will sit down and say, well, you want this, and somebody else wants this, and somebody else wants that. My answer to you is that we all want the same fundamental things. We all want effective writing. We all want a clear argument. We all want the components of this classical disposition. The exordium, the narration, the proposition, the division, the confirmation, the refutation, and the conclusion. It doesn't matter what discipline you're in or what field you're studying. We all want the fundamental basic building blocks that you demonstrate critical thought and effective communication. There are a few fields that have different expectations, so it's very important for you to ask your professor what those expectations are. So for instance, in the Department of Religion, they will often ask you for an expository essay. Does anyone know the difference between an expository and an argumentative essay?
Does an expository just look at what you're giving, the information you're giving out?
Exactly. So an expository essay provides a survey of the already common knowledge on the topic. It often happens when you can't possibly come up with an insightful or unique idea. So writing an expository essay provides the survey of what is already present in the field. It doesn't ask you to create an argument. So find out what the expectations are for each one of your professors. So final exercise of today, the message is also the medium. I have delivered a seminar that follows the classical form of an essay. Has anyone noticed?
Yeah.
Yeah? I would like you to tell me what the major parts of my argument have been. What is my exordium?
The first couple of
The speeches. So I read out a number of speeches and I asked you to think about them in larger terms. That was my exordium. It was designed to capture your attention and make you well disposed to my argument. What was my narration? Right.
The background about Cicero and how the argument is structured with what is that exordial narration proposition.
Exactly. So I created a narration. I stated my terms. I gave you some context about Cicero to give you some background. I wasn't arguing anything innovative. I was just giving you context from which to spring the argument about essay writing. So that was my narration. What was my proposition? Exactly. So I suggested that in my proposition, essays were a skill that wouldn't just help you in your classes, but they would also help you in the rest of your life. What was my division? Evan?
Talking about different aspects of the essay writing and different parts of what you're going to say.
Yes. So I said, I'm going to look at 3 major parts. I'm going to look at 5 parts of rhetoric. We're going to focus on division, and then I'm going to give you some key concepts. Right? I gave you 3 major points in the confirmation. What was my reputation? Right. So some students may think that essay writing is not useful, or that professors want different things. That's my reputation. That's the anticipation of an alternative perspective. And I tried to give you some reasons why that's not the case. So that was my refutation. And finally, my conclusion is that you should keep in mind that an essay comes from the root of the French verb essayer, to try. It is a genre that was developed as a kind of attempt, and you will constantly be attempting to write an essay. Keep in mind that we are here to help you. Every performance gets feedback and revision to master the next performance. So please use me as a resource going forward. Thank you.